Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is spend. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might hear the verb spend used is to mean to pay out money or other resources in order to buy or hire goods or services. A second way you might hear the verb spend used is to mean to employ labor or time or something else. And you're doing that either on some sort of object or in pursuit of some activity. A third way to use the verb spend is to mean to use or give out the whole of something. So using all of one's money. You might hear that. I've spent all of my money. A fourth way you might hear the verb spend used is to mean to pass time in a particular manner or in a particular place or something else, but again, really connected to how one is passing one's time. You should know that spend is an irregular verb. To make the progressive tense, we're going to add ing to form spending. The past tense and participle forms of this verb, though, have a different spelling. We're going to change the D to a T, and that creates the verb spent. Spent. You'll be happy to know that I don't have any additional phrasal verbs or meanings for us to look at today, so that's going to allow us to move on and do some other verb tense practice with our verb spend. Today we're going to take a look at the imperative, which again means a command. We'll practice using spend in the simple present, and we'll practice using it in the simple future. Let's start with the imperative. What I hope you remember about the imperative is that it's rather unique in that there is not a stated subject. So we don't have an I, you, we, they, he, she, or it. The subject is always implied. And what I mean by that is we intend to be telling you, either singular or you plural, to do an activity, but we don't specifically state you need to do this. Okay? So with the imperative in the affirmative, we're going to start our sentence with the base verb. Okay? Now, you can always soften an imperative statement by using please. You could put please at the beginning, or you could put please at the end. You don't need it in both spots, though. One please is just fine. Let's look at an affirmative example. Spend your time with your loved ones. Okay, so maybe someone is perhaps talking to their employees and saying, like, you need to go home. Spend time with your loved ones. Okay? If I want to make a negative imperative, so I'm telling someone not to do a particular action, I'm going to start with don't. And again, just like the affirmative, I could add please to the beginning or the end to sort of soften or make the statement seem a little kinder or more polite. So let's look at another example. Don't spend money you don't have. Well, this might be a command coming from a parent to a child. At least that's something I heard often as I was growing up and learning how to manage money. Now let's take a look at the simple present. Many times we use this verb tense to talk about habits or routines, but we also use it to discuss facts. In the affirmative, if our subject is I, you, we, or they, then I'm just going to use the base verb as it exists. But if my subject is he, she, or it, then I need to add an S to the end of the verb to make the affirmative tense. And we'll see that here in the affirmative example. She spends her weekends volunteering with a charity. So again, this is talking about how she passes her time. Okay? If I had been talking about two people, I'd say they spend their weekends. Now let's look at a negative simple present sentence. To make the simple present, we're going to use do not in the base verb, or you might hear native speakers say don't and then spend. Or if our subject is he, she, or it, we're going to say does not and then the base verb, or doesn't in the base verb. Here is another example sentence. They don't spend much time indoors. Finally, if I want to ask a question in the simple present, I'm going to start with do or does, then I'll have my subject and then the base verb. Do you spend most of your time at work? Now let's take a look at the simple future. And today we're going to practice simple future sentences using will. And what's nice about that is our formation here is just going to be will and the base verb. And that will be true no matter what our subject is. Let's take a look at an example sentence. The average family will spend $500 during the holiday season. If I want to make a negative simple future sentence, though, I'm going to insert not after will. And you might hear native speakers use the contraction won't. Here is an example sentence. He won't spend much money on himself. Finally, if I want to ask a question using will, I'm going to start with that word. Then I'll have my subject and then the base verb. Will you spend the holidays traveling? And again, asking how someone might pass their time. Now, let's take a look at some related words and phrases with our verb of the day, spend. We're going to start off with another verb. It's overspend. And you can probably tell by that prefix over that this means that someone is spending more than they expected, or maybe more than they had set aside. That's what allotted means. So maybe you had in your mind, I'm not going to spend more than $100 on something, but if you spend $110 on that thing, you have just overspent. And something to point out here with our verb, the way we make our progressive and past tense forms are going to mimic what we just did with our base verb spend. So let's look at an example of overspend in a sentence. The company overspent on its renovation of its plant. Okay? So here, this is an example of a simple past tense sentence. And the reason I can tell is I see overspent. And that's what's telling me that it's the simple past tense. Another phrase you might hear is a big spender. This is a person who spends a lot of money. Here is an example of this in a sentence. For big spenders, financial planning is the best way to make sure that they do not end up in debt. So end up owing a lot of money to another company, an institution, or maybe even another person. The last word we're going to look at is, it's going to sound like a similar noun. It's spendthrift, and it is definitely someone who spends a lot of money, but they're also spending it in an extravagant and irresponsible way. So they might not have much of it, and they definitely aren't going to after they're done buying things and whatever else they choose to do with this money. Let's take a look at spendthrift in a sentence. Protesters see the city council as a group of irresponsible spendthrifts. So I saw this sentence in a news article describing how a particular city government was allocating money to certain projects or initiatives, and refusing to allocate it to other things that citizens thought were really important for their particular community. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.